California is imposing a desperate new reality on 39 million people. A permanent state of water rationing, enforced by fines of $10,000 a day. The state is preparing for a catastrophe, a future without water. But here is the part that makes no sense. As of right now, California is not in a drought. Its reservoirs are overflowing, sitting at 122% of their historical average for this time of year. The U.S. Drought Monitor confirms it. Only 5% of the state shows even a moderate lack of water. The state is drowning in a surplus. And yet, the restrictions are here. The cuts are real. And for some, the water is already gone. What would you do if you were told to prepare for a drought, while the rain was pouring down outside? Let us know in the comments. This is a conversation we need to have. This is not a story about a temporary emergency. It's about a permanent, calculated, and terrifying decision to starve a state of water in order to save it. A decision made by a handful of people in Sacramento that will change the life of every single person who lives there. A lot of people are seeing the headlines, but they're not getting the full story. They're missing the details that explain what's really happening. Make sure you're not one of them. Subscribe to this channel. It's urgent you understand what comes next. Now, let's begin. The plan has a deceptively simple name: Making Conservation a California Way of Life. It is not a suggestion. It is a legally binding mandate adopted by the California State Water Resources Control Board on July 3, 2024. As of January 1, 2025, it became the law of the land. This regulation doesn't target you directly. The state won't fine you for watering your lawn. They do something much more effective. They go after the suppliers. Over 400 urban retail water suppliers, the local agencies that deliver water to 95% of the state's population, are now held to a strict water budget. A budget set not by local needs, but by a state formula. If a water district exceeds its budget, the fines begin. $1,000 a day for the first offense. And it escalates. $10,000 per day. Every single day they remain out of compliance. It's a penalty so severe it can bankrupt a small water agency in months. So the agencies have no choice. They have to pass that pressure onto their customers. They become the enforcers. They are the ones who will raise your rates. They are the ones who will pay you to rip out your lawn. They are the ones who will ban outdoor watering on certain days, or outright. The state avoids the public outrage. The local utility takes the blame. It is a brilliant and ruthless piece of political engineering. And it forces a single, terrifying question into the open. Why is this happening now, when the state is wetter than it has been in years? The answer has nothing to do with today's weather. It has everything to do with a future that has already been modeled, a future California's leaders have decided is inevitable. The age of snow is over. For a century, California's entire civilization was built on a simple, elegant, and free gift from nature: the Sierra Nevada snowpack. Winter storms would dump trillions of gallons of frozen water across the mountain range. That snow would act as a natural reservoir, melting slowly through the spring and summer, refilling the state's man-made reservoirs just as demand peaked in the hot, dry months. The entire system, the dams, the canals, the aqueducts, the concrete arteries that give life to Los Angeles and the Central Valley, it was all designed for that slow, predictable release. That predictability is now gone. Climate models are no longer ambiguous. They are certain. As temperatures rise, more winter precipitation falls not as snow, but as rain. Rain that doesn't stay frozen in the mountains. Rain that rushes down the watersheds all at once, in the middle of winter, when the state's reservoirs are already trying to maintain space for flood control. It's too much water, at the wrong time, in the wrong form. They can't capture it all, so they watch it flow out to sea. Then, when summer arrives, the natural reservoir in the mountains is gone. There is no slow melt. There is just heat, evaporation, and a system hollowed out from the inside. Experts call it hydrological whiplash, violent swings from catastrophic floods to multi-year, soul-crushing droughts. Not a cycle, a permanent condition. This regulation, the fines, the mandated conservation, it is the state's first, desperate attempt to re-engineer society itself to match this new reality. They are trying to force 39 million people to behave as if they are in a perpetual drought, because in the eyes of the planners, they are. How do you even begin to prepare for a crisis like this? Share this video with your family. Let them know what's happening. And if you're getting value from this breakdown, a like is always appreciated. It tells the algorithm that this is a story that needs to be seen. The memory of the last great drought is what fuels this new strategy. The years between 2012 and 2016 were a preview of the future Sacramento is so afraid of. It was a mega drought that shattered records and pushed the state to the brink. Lake Oroville, the keystone of the state water project, dropped to terrifying lows. Shasta Lake, the state's largest reservoir, became a shadow of its former self. The state responded with chaos. A patchwork of emergency declarations and temporary restrictions. Governor Jerry Brown ordered a mandatory 25% reduction in urban water use statewide, the first in California's history. Water cops patrolled neighborhoods, issuing tickets for leaky sprinklers. Restaurants stopped serving water unless customers explicitly asked for it. The message was clear. The crisis was here, and everyone had to sacrifice. It worked, sort of. Urban Californians did cut back. They let their lawns go brown. They took shorter showers. They proved they could conserve when a crisis was obvious. But the measures were reactive. They were ugly. They were driven by panic, not by design. And as soon as the rains returned in 2017, the rules vanished. The sense of urgency evaporated. California went back to normal. Inside the state's water agencies, planners like Wade Crowfoot at the Natural Resources Agency and the board chaired by E. Joaquin Esquivel at the State Water Board, they knew that normal was a fantasy. They knew the next drought would be worse, and the one after that, worse still. They concluded that a system relying on emergency declarations was a system designed to fail. So in 2018, the state legislature passed a pair of laws, AB 1668 and SB 606. These bills were the genesis of the new reality. They ordered the state water bureaucracy to abandon the cycle of emergency proclamations and create a permanent framework for water efficiency. It took them 6 years of studies, hearings, and political fights to finalize the details. 6 years to build the regulatory machine that finally switched on in January 2025. The new rules are not about punishing individuals. They are about math. Each urban water provider is given a unique water use objective, an annual budget. This budget is calculated based on 3 key factors. First, an indoor residential standard. This starts at 55 gallons per person per day and will drop even lower in the coming years. Second, an outdoor standard based on the specific climate and landscape area of the community. A provider in cool, foggy San Francisco has a very different outdoor water budget than one in sun-baked Palm Springs. Third, a standard for real water loss from leaks in the delivery system. Add these numbers up, and you get the total volume of water the district is allowed to use. Go over it, and the financial hammer comes down. To understand what this means on the ground, look at the desert. The Desert Water Agency, which serves a community like Palm Springs, has publicly stated that to meet its state-mandated target, it needs to cut its overall water use by 40%. 40%. That is not a number you achieve by asking people to take shorter showers. That is a number that requires the fundamental transformation of the landscape. It is the end of the traditional American front lawn. It means ripping out acres of non-functional turf, from parks, from medians, from the common areas of housing developments. This is the goal, to make a green lawn in a dry climate as socially unacceptable as smoking in a hospital. Not through a public service announcement, through a state-enforced budget that makes the cost of keeping that grass alive prohibitively expensive. This is the death of the lawn, by regulatory decree. While cities are being forced into a permanent water diet, another part of California is being starved outright. The Central Valley, the agricultural heartland of the nation, an area that produces a quarter of America's food, a region that depends almost entirely on water delivered from hundreds of miles away. In February of 2026, the farming community received a notice that defied all logic. The U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, the federal agency that operates the massive Central Valley Project, announced its initial water allocation for agricultural contractors south of the Sacramento-San Joaquin River Delta. The number was 15%, 1-5, in a year when the reservoirs were at 122% of average. In a year when the state was officially declared drought-free on December 9, 2025. In a year when snowpack was healthy and river flows were strong. Imagine being a farmer, seeing the news reports of overflowing lakes, and then being told, you will only receive 15% of the water you have a contract for. That is not a water shortage. Farmers call it a man-made drought. The decision is a direct consequence of a decades-long conflict between human water supply and environmental protection, a conflict that reaches its boiling point in the fragile ecosystem of the delta. State and federal laws mandate that a certain amount of cold water must flow through the delta and out to the ocean to protect endangered species, like the delta smelt and winter-run Chinook salmon. Maintaining low river temperatures and sufficient outflow often requires holding back enormous volumes of water in upstream reservoirs like Shasta. So even when Shasta Lake is nearly full, that water is not necessarily available for farms. It is being held as an ecological buffer. In an exceptionally wet year like 2026, the Bureau of Reclamation's decision to allocate just 15% was seen by the agricultural industry as a statement, a declaration that even in times of abundance, environmental obligations will now come first. It creates a chilling precedent. If farmers who grow the nation's food are cut off when the reservoirs are bursting, what happens when it actually stops raining? What happens when the hydrological whiplash delivers the next 5-year drought? Does that 15% allocation go to zero? For many, the answer seems to be a foregone conclusion. The Central Valley is being systematically dewatered, not by climate change directly, but by the policy decisions made in response to it. The future of farming in California is being fundamentally rewritten, one allocation notice at a time. It's a slow-motion economic collapse, and most of the country has no idea it's even happening. I know this is the second time I'm asking, but it's critical. If you are still watching, it means you understand the gravity of this situation. So many people watch these briefings and forget to subscribe. Don't let that be you. This story is unfolding in real time, and you need to be part of the informed group that sees it coming. Hit subscribe now. Faced with this inescapable reality, a future with less snowpack, intense urban rationing, and crippling agricultural cutbacks, Governor Gavin Newsom decided that California could not just conserve its way out of the problem. It had to build. On February 25, 2026, Newsom launched what his office called the most ambitious water plan in California history. It is a master plan to remake the state's water infrastructure for the 21st century. The foundation of this plan is a law, SB 72, authored by State Senator Ana Caballero and signed by Newsom in October 2025. That law doesn't just suggest goals. It creates a statutory mandate.